All right, man. So hi, everybody. My name is Samantha Lane, and I am the Director of Sales and Marketing for SE Shires. And tonight we have the wonderful Brian Hecht, bass trombonist at the Atlanta Symphony, soloist, educator, chamber musician, the whole nine yards, and Shires artist. This is going to be super fun. We're going to chat with Brian about bass trombone playing and orchestral auditions, stuff about his Lone Star model, his life in and out of the orchestra. So if you do have questions, pop them in the comments below. I'm going to keep an eye on all of this. I'm sure we're going to be able to cover a fair amount of fun stuff. So just let us know if you have a question or want some clarification on something. But I am going to turn it over to Brian to give us a little bit more information about himself and how he became the wonderful Brian Hecht.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me on this. This is really cool. I've been following the ShiresTV posts and live streams for a few weeks. It's cool to be a part of this. Anyway, yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a Texas boy, born and raised. I was actually born in Galveston. I'm going to go real deep in detail for a second. But I was born in Galveston, but moved to Dallas whenever I was like 2. So as far as I'm concerned, Dallas was home to me for, all through high school. Moved around a bunch in Dallas. So I lived in for those of you familiar with Dallas, lived in Richardson and Irving, in Carrollton, Farmers Branch, and finally my dad ended up in Coppell. So I went to Coppell Middle School, Lakeside Elementary. Studied with the great John Bowles there. Hopefully a lot of you guys know John Bowles. Studied with him in Coppell Middle School East, then North, and then Coppell High School. And then after that, my father's a cardiologist, and so I wanted to sort of all through high school I was like, I'm gonna be a doctor as well. So and he went to University of Texas at Austin, so I was like, I'm gonna be a doctor that studies at the same school. I'm gonna go there. And I actually got into University of Texas on pre-med, a human biology major.
Wow, I never knew that.
First, yeah. And I would much rather listen to like a podcast or watch a movie than read a book. Like my attention span is all over the place.
Yeah.
So whenever I showed up at orientation, what's one of my favorite stories is that I was in literally my human biology class for orientation. And they were like, all right, I need you to buy this book and this book. And I mean, it was just stack of books that was like this tall. And I remember I actually had in my backpack my trombone books because I didn't really, that's what I had been carrying around. I'd been practicing a lot that summer leading up to orientation. And I looked at the size of those books, and I looked at the size of the human biology books, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with trombone for a little bit.
I think I have my answer.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I switched over to music after I'd already gotten in for pre-med, and went with that. There's a whole story I'll tell you guys another time over about how I actually didn't get into the University of Texas School of Music. I auditioned. It did not go well. I had the age-old excuse of, I swear this sounded better in the practice room. And I literally dropped that line. Like, we all hear about it, but I dropped it. I used it. And
Wow.
Dr. Brickens, not a fool. He's a smart man, and he was not buying it. So he was such a nice guy that he ended up, long story short, he gave me a deferred admission, but my ADHD brain was like, oh, I got in, cool, I'll go make all the paperwork changes. And ended up, he let me in even though I wasn't supposed to. And he switched me over to bass trombone. That was on tenor trombone then, sorry. Wow. He switched me over to bass trombone summer before my junior year of undergrad. And I was really upset about it at first, actually. I thought that, I was going to really figure out tenor and get things going, and it was not working. So switched me over to bass. And then a year later, after switching, I auditioned and got into Northwestern for grad school. Thankfully to say I was really happy with the switch. Went to grad school at Northwestern 2007 to 2009. Right after that, I was very fortunate that I won a job with the U.S. Navy Band in D.C. in the fall of 2009. That was kind of a scary part of my life because we've all been there where you're coming up on your, graduation. You're like, all right, what am I going to do? I don't have a job.
Right.
And because I took the Navy band audition in like March of my graduating year from grad school, March 09, and I made finals and I bombed the sight reading. And so they didn't pick anybody. We all bombed sight reading. And so they declared no winner. And I was actually like going to be a banker. I was going to go, my aunt back in Dallas, she worked at a bank, and basically like she was like, all right, we'll just come back, you can be a teller and I'll get you set up with a job. And so I was going to do that, but then in September, thankfully they held the Navy band audition again and I didn't have to do it. So went to boot camp in October of 09, 2 months in boot camp, and joined the Navy band in December of 09, and served there 4 years till 2013, whenever I, as a result of some success in advancing at big auditions, I was asked to come do a 1-year Atlanta Symphony when George won the New York Philharmonic.
Right.
I was runner up to him there. So it was fun. I was walking out of the audition and Nate Zagance calls me as I'm like head hung low, walking to the bus to go back to DC. And he's like, hey, sucks you didn't win New York, but you want to come play with us in Atlanta? And I was like, yes, okay, this is actually an awesome day. I told him like right away, like, yep, I'm coming. So Navy band actually transferred me to a recruiting station down here in Atlanta that I had to, because my enlistment wasn't up yet until end of October. But they needed me beginning of September, and it was kind of a deal breaker if I couldn't make it. So Navy band made it work. I had to report to a recruitment station here in Atlanta for like a month when I first got here, and then they basically told me to like stop showing up.
Yeah, they're like, please,
it's nothing they could do with the trombone. I know, like, unless you're gonna bring your trombone and play stuff for us, like just stop showing up.
Right.
Like, we don't need you here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was fall of 2013, and I think I just finished 18, 19, 19, 20. Just finished up my 7th season. Wow. And about to start my 8th season with the Atlanta Symphony. So yeah, there's a little story there. Sorry that.
No, this is perfect. And so, but you do some teaching and stuff too, right? Where are you teach privately? You teach at some school.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've taught privately ever since I started in the Navy band, but I teach at I've been teaching at Kennesaw State University. Yeah, I'm currently on a sabbatical there right now, so I'm not like teaching with them. But yeah, I'm on faculty at Kennesaw State University and do most of my teaching privately.
Nice. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
This is actually awesome. We're like friends, and there are so many little tidbits about your life that I didn't know. So this is illuminating for me as well as the rest of Facebook land. We're already having some people write in about missing you from the Navy band. Mike Webb says, hey.
Oh, Mike. I was just talking with that guy the other day. I was watching the movie Bombshell, and there's a clip of him in it.
Really? That's wild.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow. Love that guy.
So slightly unrelated to trombone, but somebody else had written in and said podcast for the win. So if you have any recent podcast finds that you've been liking.
I always love listening to the Brass Junkies.
Yeah.
That's always a great one. Let's see, what else do I do? I like getting out of the trombone world and music world as much as I can, just because I feel like my head's in it all the time. What's the one that My Life in Parts by Bryan Cranston.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's incredible. When we had our first kid, we became a road tripping family. And so like it was at that point, it was all about the podcasts. Like we would drive through the night, the kid would sleep, and that's pretty much when we go visit family. It's a 13-hour drive. I'd plug in that podcast. I finished it on the way there, and I actually was like, no, I'll keep driving. You sleep, honey. Because I was that hooked to that podcast. I mean, for those of you that don't know, Bryan Cranston is the lead in Breaking Bad.
Right.
And he talks about how he got his start doing ads for Snickers. And he had to like rappel off some cliff and basically working from doing ads for Snickers to one of the, you know, top TV show actors of all time, at least in my opinion. So
That,
I would
yeah,
definitely recommend that one, Bryan Cranston's My
nice,
Life in Parts.
nice.
Yeah.
Here, let me see. So I do have some questions, some stuff that was written in, and we'll keep fielding stuff as people are writing to us. But in terms of like bass trombone sound, you are definitely a recognizable player for so many people who are like looking up to bass trombonists. I know I've heard you play in like so many different settings, solo, chamber. You sing with my brass quintet. That was a blast. Um,
Oh, that's right.
that
Man, that
was
was so much fun.
I know. But no, but how did you develop your sound? Who were some of your like sound icons that you'd listen to? How did you get to it?
Yeah, that one's an easy answer. That's every time I hear Randy Hawes or Charlie Vernon play, like I just my jaw just drops. Like Randy just posted a video the other day, and I wish he would post more. He posted a video of him playing a song with his son at piano, and
Yeah,
I mean, I listened to that thing probably 10 times in a row, and I was just, and I like went back to my practice room, and I'm like, am I close to that? Am I like, because that their sounds are still, you know, I mean, I love my own concept, um, and I think it's still like fine to hear other people play and think, you know, my sound concept is different, and that's still amazing. But every time I hear theirs, I'm just like, I love that sound. I just love hearing those guys play. So for me, it's those two titans in the bass
yeah,
trombone world, and just every time they play, that's I want to sound like a mixture of those two players.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. So like, how do you describe like an ideal bass trombone sound if you're working with a student, like a college student? Somebody comes to you and says like, Mr. Hecht, how can I make my sound better? What should I sound like? Do you tell them to go listen to recordings? Do you tell them to work on?
Yeah, I mean that's the start of it. I mean that's definitely the start. Is you got to listen. You got to if you want to be an expert at anything, you have to study. You know, so if you want to, if you're talking about sound, start studying sound. And in order to do that, you have to start creating opinions, right? Like don't just put music on in the background, but like actively listen to it. You know, like listen. One of the I think best things that someone told me is when you find someone's sound you love, try to describe it in as many adjectives as you can. And
Yeah,
whenever I hear those two guys play, it's just like it's buttery, right? Is
yeah,
I guess a
awesome.
foodie way to describe it. It's like got this like this buttery chocolatey sound. You know, it's dark, it's resonant, it's vibrant, it's colorful, but in like a like purples, blues, and not like yellows and oranges, but like it's
That's
got a lot of
awesome.
beautiful dark colors, you know, that you whenever I hear like the tone I have in my head, I imagine that if I were sitting there listening to it, I would feel it in my shoulders. As a listener, you feel it instead of it just being in the room with you. It surrounds you. Um, and I often think about that. That's what I always want in my own tone is I want it to resonate. Like I want to be like standing in this orb of resonance on stage. I don't want my tone to
Right.
just like be this laser beam going out, but I want it to be this warmth that fills the room, you know, like um, yeah, and I'd say just like as many of those adjectives as you can fit in there, the more the better, because the more detailed your concept, the more detailed your approach, right? If you've got all these, you know, colors and textures and depths to your the way you can describe that sound that you're wanting, then you're going to go at each one of those. And I think depth is another word that I really like to use. Like I want my sound to have depth to it. I want for it to hit you and keep going, not just hit you and stop, right? But it actually has sustain and just yeah, all that resonance is probably in that orb of sound is probably the best way to describe it.
No, man,
But that's how I'd recommend anyone. Yeah.
that's an awesome tip. Being able to like kind of qualify it in words, even if it's kind of a foreign concept to like think about it like that. I mean, that's how we talk about horns. We were just chatting about trombone bells before we got on here. And it's like the same kind of
Right.
thing. You have to find ways to convey something that's pretty abstract. It's kind of weird when you think about it.
Yeah, no, you're totally right, and it's all opinion too. You know, like what I might call buttery, someone else might call, bright and
Right.
electric, right? It's all subjective and it's all your opinion. But I think it's important that you're able to study something long enough to create those opinions and those concrete details, because if you just let it remain in the abstract, then it's really kind of hard to pin down which direction you're going. Like, I don't know if you guys can see. No, you probably can't. My contra case is blocking the way, but I've got like 4 or 5 bells lined up over here on the floor that I like to just play with from time to time, especially right now whenever I don't have any obligations. I
Right.
like to just like play around with colors. Like, what does this one do for me? Let me try it out. And that's the one thing I like to notice the most is, how does this change my sound? What sort of colors does it bring in? Does it make it brighter? Does it make it darker? Does it make it more penetrating,
Right.
more warmth? Does it go this way or does it go this way? And all of those things I think are really important to think about whenever you're molding your own sound.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a good question actually, since, I mean, maybe we can kind of go down this tangent a little bit talking about like bass trombone playing and trombone playing for a little while. But Kevin was asking, do you have any advice for somebody who's starting a practice journal? Have you kept one yourself? Do you have any tips? What should we look for in terms of checklists?
I
Yeah.
got one right here. I literally keep it on my desk. In my other one, where'd it go? Oh, it's right here. This is the first practice journal I ever kept. This is from like whenever I was in grad school and stuff, and I
Nice.
filled this
Okay.
sucker up with just loose pages. But I keep it right here on my desk just as like a nice reminder. Um, write down everything that works, right? Whenever you figure something out, like I think a practice journal is great. I don't think it's great to write down like, all right, today I worked on this, and this exercise. Okay, done, right? Or went to here to here. But right when you feel like, I actually like, I keep it to a constant. It's like a concentrated um improvement journal, I guess. I don't
Right.
know. I'm not getting the right words, but whenever I figure something out, like whenever I break through in my high range, low range articulation, like anything, I write it down, what I did that got me success in that fundamental. So that, because getting better on the instrument, it's like a juggling act. Like you'll focus on tone, and the moment you take your eye off of articulations, it's gone, right? It just slips away. I mean, you work on tone just for a week, then when you come back to articulations, like you might find, what, I just had that last week. Where did it go? Go back to the journal and figure out what did you do to get it in the first place. And I often find that if I just do that again, it comes back faster. And you do it again, it comes back faster. So then that leads me to the next point, is that you start figuring out you as a player, right? You start figuring out that these are the things I need to do on a regular basis to keep all of these fundamentals of my playing at the very top. And that's the main thing I use my journal for. But what I originally started it for, and so if this is going for
Yeah.
someone just starting out on their journal, write down what you do when you have a good day, right? I feel like that was the most frustrating thing for me early on, is you're trying to improve and you're constantly like battling good days versus bad days. You might go to the practice room thinking, man, I've got the motivation to get some stuff done today. But then you pick up the horn and it's just not a good playing day. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things, to hit that wall. But I started this journal because I got tired of having those days. And I realized that if I needed to beat people older than me, I needed to get better every single day and not just a couple days a week. And so I started, every time I'd have a good day over the course, it took me about like a year or 2 years to really develop this. Every day I would have a good day. I'd write down, what did I do? What did I do to warm up? Did I get good sleep? Like I would just like take as many notes about my day and previous day as possible, so that I could start noticing patterns. And after a few months of doing this, just on my good days, I did start noticing patterns, like drinking enough water, taking care of
Right.
my body, eating healthy, getting enough sleep so that your mind can regenerate the things it's learned. I learned that my first notes of the day are just not going to be my best notes, so don't expect them to be. Like wait till your second practice. For me, wait till my second practice session to really start getting better. The first one is just doing my routine to make sure I set myself up for a good day.
Right.
And I learned so much about myself by doing this that I was able to slowly increase my good days a week from 2 to 3 to 7. And I feel like I have a routine now based on these 2 years of keeping this journal that I can do this routine 9 times out of 10 and I'm ready to have a good day. Like there's nothing's going to be 10 out of 10 consistent, but 9 times out of 10, I
Pretty
do
good
my
math.
routine and I'm ready to go. So
Yeah.
I think, man, a journal's so important.
So
That was a really good question,
you're
but
pretty positive though in your journaling. Like you're looking for a success. You're not like beating yourself down in this journal. Like, hey, man, that really sucked. Blah blah blah.
well, no. In fact,
Yeah.
I don't share this journal with anyone. So this is actually the first time I'll actually share it is on this thing. Um, for instance, what did I write down most recently? Okay, so I've got a practice note here that I was noticing. I like to practice with music in the background or like a TV show on.
Mhm.
But I noticed that I was starting to get worse at a certain point. So I wrote something down here that says, if you're going to practice with a TV show or movie, make sure you're practicing a solo or etude or something you can sing that requires you to sing. A daily routine can be too mindless and
Sure.
you lose focus on improving. So I found like I used to think that I could just do my daily routine and turn on like a movie, but I'm not actually getting any better because it's something I do every single day. It's so easy to just turn my brain off. But if
Mm-hmm.
I put like a Bordoni in front of me, I'm actually interested in singing it, and I'll I'll pop in and out of the movie with my main focus being trombone and a
Yeah.
side focus being movie instead of the other way around.
Right. Right.
So, for instance, another one, audition readiness and success, right? And it's kind of just like free form here, right? So
Yeah. Cool.
this one is audition readiness and success is you have to prove to yourself every day why you deserve to win. And that was like something, a quote that kind of hit me. I started thinking to myself, like, how do I feel comfortable performing recitals, auditions, whatever? Why, like, I still get nervous, but how do I combat them is a question I've had a lot. And for me, it's, I have to prove to myself that like I can do it. And like, why should they pay me for this job that I'm auditioning for? Like, why, if I were on the committee, like I need to have an answer to that question, and it needs to be the candidates playing. So as the candidate, I need to have that answer as the performer, right? To like feel confident that like, no, you should pay me because I've worked so hard. And I truly believe that. And you have to prove it to yourself, I think, to believe in that philosophy. Um, and so that's what I like this journal for. It's just
Awesome.
writing down those things that push you to the next level, even if it's just a baby step. They
Mhm.
add up, and then you can come back. And when I read, if I take a break from trombone, I'll come back and I'll read some pages out of it, and it reminds me of my practice track and my train of thought whenever I'm trying to improve and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. I feel like you should consider publishing these journals.
Hell no.
Let's see. So
Maybe later in life. We'll
maybe
see.
later in life, yeah. The memoirs of Brian Hecht.
Yeah, right.
So a couple of, like practice questions. Franco was wondering, how do you organize a regular day of practice? Things now are probably quite a bit different for you than they are when like the season's really heavy. So maybe like, I don't know, maybe just now, like talk about now. How are you practicing at this point?
So yeah, now it's very different. Like for those of you that don't know a little bit about me, is I've got a wife and two kids, a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old. And so right now, because I don't have any commitments coming up, yeah, I'm being a dad as much as I can, and practice is not really I get it whenever I can. It's usually after kids go to bed at night. I'll come down and practice like, for an hour or two if I'm maybe, like it's usually like at least an hour. And if I'm really good about it, 2 hours. But the way I would always structure my practice pre-COVID and during COVID is I always start with my daily routine, right? Like that's, like I said, that's what I'm setting myself up for the most amount of improvement if I'm having a good day.
Mm-hmm.
So I make sure I get my daily routine done, and that
Are
takes
you
about 45 minutes
are you doing
to
that
an hour.
first
Yeah.
thing in the morning kind of thing, as much as you can?
If I can.
You can, yeah.
No, if I can, on the like my wife's working 2 days a week right now. So like those days, like no way. The other five,
Yeah.
because I wake up and I go straight to daddy mode.
Yeah.
On the other days, like the other 5 days a week, it's still no. We've been spending a lot of family time during this lockdown, quarantine, pandemic, whatever you want to call it. So we usually start our days just hanging out, breakfast, and my practice is revolving around nap schedule.
Nice. Okay.
So
Familiar.
yeah, naps are anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. I'm lucky if I get that 2 hour one. And so I'll come down and I start buzzing right away for like 20 to 25 minutes. And that's usually like my first session, like that 30-minute nap that I'll get. I'm just where did it go? I've got it somewhere. Oh, back there. I have a mouthpiece like locked into a lead pipe.
That was another question
Sitting
actually
on my
somebody just brought up. It's so funny that you mention it. They were asking, do you have any tips for buzzing with a lead pipe? Because for them, anything above a D starts to fizzle out, but on the horn, it's not a problem.
Right. And it was the same for me as well. Whenever I first started doing it, I first of all, the reason why I like the lead pipe better is because it more closely resembles the resistance you're going to get from the trombone.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like just the mouthpiece, especially on a bass trombone mouthpiece, it's just so open. And I find that progress for me doesn't transfer as fluidly from just the mouthpiece to the bass trombone. Now it's different when you know what you're doing, right? Like I still buzz with just the mouthpiece, but if I'm trying to learn what to do, it's a lot more helpful to have something that resembles the trombone's resistance just a little bit more. And so the lead pipe definitely helps with that, but it's got partials, right? Especially like right around D natural above the staff. Like there's like this like bubble of like a third or a fifth sometimes. And mine was like between a third and a fifth that I couldn't play those notes. And so what I kind of, I think about it like you walk into a room and there's a couch and it's got 3 spots and there's 3 people sitting on it. There's no room for you. And you sit your butt down anyway. You start squeezing in there in between people and you make room. So what I recommend doing is you're going to find that gap in your playing where it's saying there's no room for you here, but you just force your way into the middle of that bubble in the range. And it's going to sound terrible at first. Like I remember it's a lot like just taking the inner slide out. Like for instance, great example here. I was talking with my buddy Oscar about this a while back. Oscar Diaz, you probably know him.
Yeah, of course.
And we were talking about the lead pipe, and he's like, you know what, you should step up your game and you should buzz just on the inner slide. And I was like, whoa, okay now. All right, that's big boy pants right there. So, and it's really difficult, but whenever I do the same thing, this is kind of what it sounded like when I started buzzing with the lead pipe. Right, there's that gap,
that break.
So what you do is you have to like literally just push yourself into the middle, and it sounds terrible.
Yeah,
it really sounds like a dying
animal.
It
really sounds horrible, Brian.
And I mean, but it started as like a game, like, you know what, I'm giving myself another challenge, another hurdle, whatever. It sounds like you just ran over a cow or something. Like, it's just terrible. But it eventually starts sounding better. I recommend using vibrato to help you just like open up the space a little bit, open up your pitch center a little bit. And what the transfer is once you start getting it sounding better, then suddenly you have a note in the middle of that bubble, and then you have 2 smaller bubbles. So you do the same thing with those 2 smaller bubbles, and eventually you just iron it out to where there are no partials, and you can do a siren from your lowest note to your highest note.
Right.
And what I found was, for me, that bubble existed um, right where I had a shift, right? And so it's like where my embouchure was weak, because it wasn't really strong with my mid-range embouchure, and it wasn't really strong with my upper embouchure. And so it was an honest reflection of my level of
That's
embouchure
interesting.
strength. And
Wow.
so I noticed that whenever I mastered the mouthpiece with the lead pipe, my shift, it became like a grayscale shift. It wasn't this like night and day, like I'm either using
Yeah.
one or the other, but I was able to do like a morph from one mid-range embouchure to the upper embouchure. Um, and it just smoothed it out, and I felt like I had equal strength on every single half step going through that shift. And that's where I think it really, brings benefit to the trombone.
Man, that was a great question. And that was awesome to kind of hear you talk through that, because so many people, of course, are chatting about lead pipe buzzing and other things that they can do to strengthen embouchure, strengthen their playing. So that's awesome. Here, let me see. We had a couple questions about auditions. The big question: how do you win an audition? How do you prepare for something as big as an audition? How long, like how far in advance do you start? Um,
Yeah.
Thoughts going into?
Yeah, I've got a pretty, it's somewhat regimented uh routine.
Yeah.
So it's a 2 month process every time. Like, I've found that if I do more than 2 months, I peak too soon, I burn
Mhm.
out. It's just, and depending on the list, you can really burn out fast if it's a short list. So anything more than 2 months is just, I mean, it's just, yeah, for me, it was way too much. And I got to the audition. I was like, I stopped practicing these things like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't do it. No, but so I do 2 months. The first month is, it started out as like a discovery period where I'm learning all the excerpts. There's very few excerpts now that I haven't worked
Sure.
on.
Yeah.
Since I've taken so many auditions right now, it pains me to count them. Um, but the first month is just learning auditions, score study. A lot of these bigger orchestras, they don't give you excerpts; they just give you pieces. Like, I remember whenever I was in the Navy band, I had actually, when I was in the Navy band, I had only played with an orchestra in grad school on a rotation basis. So for a cumulative of a year, over the course of 2 years,
Oh,
I alternated between wind ensemble and orchestra. I never made the top rotation in undergrad. So for those of you thinking that you have to be first chair in undergrad to succeed, you don't. You just have to work harder than everyone else. I didn't get to play an orchestra in undergrad. So the first orchestra, and we didn't have orchestra at my high school. I didn't know about Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra whenever I was in high school. I
mm,
found out my senior year after the auditions passed. So like, I never played an orchestra until grad school, and then you played just whatever the pieces that they played. I didn't really research anything else at that point. So when the New York Phil list came out and I was gearing up for that audition, uh, they just wrote like Lohengrin, Verdi's Nabucco.
the whole thing.
Lohengrin's a long opera.
As it turns
That's a
out,
really,
yeah.
like, and I didn't know, like, I knew the licks, the high lick and the
Yeah.
low lick that are common, but I also have such a respect for the New York Philharmonic. I was like, well, they probably know every single passage in here, and they can pick any one, and they would know exactly what it's supposed to sound like, and they probably do. And so I thought to myself, well, I better be able to play the entire, like, what is it, like a 30 or 40 page part
Yeah.
to Lohengrin.
Yeah.
So I studied the entire thing, and I sat down one day for 7 hours with a score in front of me, with the YouTube of Lohengrin, and I watched the whole thing, score studied it. I made markings in my part for
Yeah.
where the timings, so I could just skip to them
Yeah.
and get more, better practice that way, just by skipping straight to the licks. But I studied the entire thing, and same thing, Verdi Nabucco, that is a 40-page part. So I printed it out, and that was in my book. I prepared the whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so that first month is all about doing that, right? Especially those of you that are jumping into auditions in undergrad, grad school, or just out of grad school, and there's stuff on there you don't know. or is unfamiliar, learn it. Because by the start of the second month, that's all consistency training.
Mm-hmm.
The second month is just getting myself from, oh, okay, I can play this perfectly 1 out of every 10 times to 9 out of 10 times, right? Getting to the point where, not to the point where I can play it, but until I, what is the quote? It's like, don't practice until you can play it. Practice it until you can't get it wrong.
Yeah, nice.
Right. And so it's to the point where I can pick it up any point, any day, no matter how my day is going, and I'm gonna play it really, really well. And so that whole second month is just repetition, right? Just cycling through this. Like I'll pick an excerpt and I'll just play it over and over and over and over, and until it becomes muscle memory. Um, because the fact of auditions is that you're not going to be able to remain focused the entire round, the entire day for 4 or 5 rounds sometimes. Your brain will tend to wander. You're going to see people out there on the committee when that screen drops and you see who's sitting out there. How are you not going to think about it?
Mm-hmm.
Of course you're going to think about it. So these excerpts need to be so ingrained in your slide arm and in your trigger fingers that they just know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that your diaphragm just knows what to do. I mean, I can't tell you, I've been in auditions in my round playing creation, thinking about what I'm going to eat later. and I'm like, whoa, Brian, wake up, snap back into it. You have an audition to do.
That's
And I
wild.
come back into it, thankfully not missing a single note, because I've played that thing probably 1,000 times that
Yeah.
second month, just going through it. So that first month is all just deciding like articulations, deciding phrasing, deciding, all right, I want to make this phrase. Where am I going to breathe in order to make it happen? And so it's, structuring your breathing, having a plan for your success, so that it's not just, well, I hope I have a good day, everybody pray for me. No, it's you're able to show up to audition saying, no, I'm gonna have a good day, because that's the plan. That's what I've been working towards, is having a good day on this day. Let's go, let's do this. And so yeah, first month is figuring out, second month is just over and over and over and over till
What about like mocks? Do you do much like mock auditions playing for people? Are you a believer in that, or do you like to keep it focused just to yourself?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I like to play for anybody but the committee.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Because I don't want to play the way I think somebody else wants me to play. Right? I don't think that, in case they want something that I don't agree with musically, like, you can't sell a product that you don't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of burned me before, where I take a lesson and I'm like, well, I have to play it that way because that one guy told me
Right.
I got to play it that way. And so, but I play for a lot of my friends, colleagues, all instruments that I can find. Like if I'm practicing on stage after a concert, oftentimes there's somebody else practicing too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, hey man, can I just play a quick round for you? There's always going to be good advice, and when you run out of things to work on, that's the best time to go play for somebody. Is, like that, it's going to happen every audition.
Right.
You get to a point where you're like, all right, I'm pretty happy with these excerpts. Go play for someone you respect the hell out of, and they'll put you back in your place.
Pretty humbling experience.
Incredibly.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have this laundry list of things to go working on again. And it's honestly, it's invigorating. It's like putting gas back in the tank. So
Nice.
definitely play for people.
Paul just had a good question, a good point. He said he finds it interesting that you say 9 out of 10 times, and you've said that like quite a few times during this thing. How do you recover when you do make a mistake or flub if you're auditioning or performing?
Stay in the recording. Stay in that recording in your head.
Well, let's talk about that, because you do a really nice job about talking about like singing and like hearing a recording in your head, and we haven't covered that. Maybe this will kind of address that question. What's your philosophy on that?
So I find that the most believable way to get your music across to somebody is to be singing it, right? I mean, when you sing, there's emotion involved. It's not just a speech where you're just talking, right? It's not, there's so much more to, I think, whenever I think about singing, I think there's so much more involved. So I listen a lot. I meant to say audition process is way more detailed than I let on, but first thing I do is I create a book and a listening list. And like, for instance, some of my books, here's one of them, like nice spiral bound book. This one sucked. That was not fun. But you create a book and you create a listening list. And as I get closer to the audition, I start listening more and more and more. I love to listen to music in general, just of all kinds. I limit myself how much music, like popular music I listen to. I lower that and I raise the amount of my audition music.
Nice.
So that whenever I'm getting close to the audition, like I just have my favorite recordings in my head. When I make a mistake, I force myself to get back to the recording, right? It's like you have to remind yourself, hey, focus, go back. Like not literally in the music, but go back to your recording, because your brain immediately wants to think like, oh no, I missed a note or I chipped a note. I've never played a perfect audition. Like you don't have to play a perfect there's no such thing as a perfect audition.
Right.
Everybody chips notes, misses notes. It happens, but it's what are you doing whenever you miss that note or chip note? Were you playing it safe or were you going for it? And being on so many committees with the Navy Band and with the ASO, I find that as a committee member, as a listener, I'm more willing to forgive mistakes if they're saying something musically, right? If they found a way to put a message into that excerpt, it's almost like when they make a mistake, I'm like, no, please keep going, like keep going. Because I want to keep hearing what they have to say. And whereas if it's just so technical, all I'm thinking about is the trombone. And so I'm sitting there like marking errors. Right. Where I find that someone who might have had the same number of errors, like the next candidate, but if they're playing more musically, I have way fewer marks because I wasn't thinking about the technical aspect of their playing. I was more engaged in the music because that's what they were offering. And I think that that's all about tying in and playing with the recording in your mind versus being like a scientist about it and trying to like be a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Mechanic, right?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. It's been really cool because I've gotten to see and hear you give master classes all over the place. And you talking about the recording in your head is always a super common theme. And I think it translates really well too, because it keeps you focused on the right thing, like you're saying. And it's a pretty like positive message to be able to take away.
Yeah. That's the big thing too, is you got to stay positive in an audition. The moment you start beating yourself down, then you start not believing that your product is worth paying for. Right. And it's like, I have this analogy that, like I like to use, it's the chef analogy, I went to a restaurant one time where the chef actually brought out the dish and I was like, wow, this is so cool. And they describe it to you. And it's a place here in Atlanta called Gun Show. Okay. If anyone here is ever in Atlanta, best restaurant I've ever been to in my life. It's American Dim Sum, right? So
nice. Wow.
They hire like 5 chefs and it's all open. Like you can see the chefs cooking, right? And you're all at these big benches.
Okay.
But the chef brings around, they make like 4 or 5 dishes each chef. So it's a menu, like of 20 items, like 5 chefs, 4 dishes, right? They bring it out to you and they describe it. And like I can't say no to anything because the way that chef describes it, I don't even like beet salad, but I want to eat that beet salad right now. Put it down, you know? And that's the best part about it is it's like, here it is. And they describe it. And they're like, I worked all day on this sauce. It's been sitting in this little wine barrel. And I'm just like, just stop. I'm
Instant
drooling.
gratification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think about that as kind of like auditions, when you show up to an audition, you have to present yourself as that chef, as one that says, I've worked on this so hard, so long. You're going to love this. Check it out. Here goes Berlioz, right? Or here goes.
I love it. That's great.
You're going to, but if you're the opposite, if you're like, imagine if the chef came out and was like, you know what? The beats kind of turned a little bit too soon. They might be a little past their prime. I messed up. I hope
you like it.
I hope you like it. Yeah, I'm not gonna want that. I'll be like, you know what? I'll wait. I'll get the next one.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly the same thing I hear in auditions when I'm on a committee is people asking questions instead of making statements. They're trying to be mechanics and be too perfect, but that you can hear when a mistake happens and it crashes and burns, or they just never get back on track. You can hear that, and it's you don't want to buy that.
Right.
You want to buy the product that's like, no, 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 that's nothing. That's nothing. A little smear on the edge of the plate. Don't worry about it. You're gonna love the dish
That's
in the middle.
intentional. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome, man. Hey, let's just a little bit more about orchestra. We had a couple questions about section stuff, section playing, but also what do you look for in like a principal trombone player or some of your like tenor section mates, sound wise, characteristics?
Yeah. No, great question. And this is something that I've sort of developed over the years. You know, I kind of had one concept when I came in, and you know, I've been able to thankfully sit next to some pretty freaking amazing musicians
Mm-hmm.
over the course of my career here in Atlanta and in the Navy Band. And I've learned a lot. And one of the things I really like to have in a principal trombone, I'll start there and then I can move to second and bass.
Sure. Yeah.
What I really want to hear in a principal trombone is I want someone who inspires me musically, right? I want someone who's willing to go for it, right? If they're going for it and they miss the high note, it's fine. As long as they get it the next time, right? If they keep missing it, maybe not. But no, I want to sit next to someone who inspires me musically and who inspires me to meet them at their level. Right. Yeah. Or, you know, it might be a totally different musical idea than I would have chosen, but it's a solid idea and I can go with it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's very convincing. They're confident about it because they're singing it from here. And it's not just like, I hope you like my musical idea. No, it's like, they're like, no, this is music. This is great music. Here it is. Follow me, guys. Let's go. A great leader doesn't ask questions. They show the way.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
That's what I think is so important in a principal trombone is someone who comes in and says, you know, not in like, it doesn't have to be like cocky. It's just, it's a friendly confidence. I think it would be, you know, like, they show with their playing that this is how it goes. I love that because then I don't have to ask any questions. I can just hear it and be like, oh, he's going to lead to that note or she's going to lead to that note and then come back. And it just, you don't have to think. You just are able to get on the same train tracks as them. And you guys can just move as a section. And that really makes a huge difference because if you don't have that, then you're constantly trying to like look over like, all right, are we on the same page together? Are we
right? And that could be real difficult.
Yeah. And so I guess along with that is I think it's important that a principal player does their homework, right? That they're getting paid an extra 20% above scale, 20% more than I am to make decisions, to come prepared, to show up to that first rehearsal with directions, right? With musical ideas, because that first rehearsal, first of all, you don't get many rehearsals. You get 4 rehearsals and then you have to deliver, you know, the best concert of your life, right? And you need consistency over the course of those 4, because even in those rehearsals, a lot of conductors won't, like if it's a big section, they might do it twice, right? And that's what I'm going off of.
Yeah.
Right. We might do, if we're doing Bruckner 4, we might do the big sections twice. And so I need consistency so I know what you're doing. If you do something different both times, then I get to a Thursday night concert, I have no idea what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I can't follow you. So I'm just going to do what I want to do, or one of the 2 things that you wanted to do. And I hope that that's what you're deciding on doing, you know?
Sure,
so that's really important, is that you show up to that first rehearsal already making those decisions. All I got to do is I just got to bring my A game and be able to follow you. So it's kind of like bass drum is kind of an easier job. So that's what I would, that's, you got to have that in principle. That's, you're making more money for a reason because you have to do more work. So
that's great.
Got to go with that. Second trombone, I think that might be the hardest position in the section because it's your job to make everyone else sound good. No one's ever going to glorify you. Rarely. You know, no one's ever going to be like, man, did you hear that second trombone? If they if they're saying that, you probably didn't do your job right.
Maybe.
Right?
We're
Your
just
job.
not a really good second trombonist.
Yeah, I mean, and Nate Zagans, when he was sitting on second, he was like, my job isn't to be heard. My job is to make that guy sound good. The
Right.
principal, right? I need to support them so well that no one notices me, and that all they notice is how amazing and how huge of a sound the principal has, when really it's just two people
Put together.
so tightly together, moving just perfectly as a pair, right? And then, so as second trombone, you've also got to be smart. You've got to know music theory. You have to know when you've got the third, the fifth, the seventh, the root. Like, as bass trombone, most of the time I have the root, right? You got to know theory on all positions, but you really got to know your theory on second, because so often you have the weirdest counterpoint.
For sure.
You're moving from roots to fifths to thirds, and you don't get any of the fun lines. Like, basses, I get these like rooty lines, and the principal gets the melody. Well, you get the filler.
Yeah.
So you got to do that. And bass trombone, my job is to bridge the gap between the tenors and the tuba. I feel that it's my job to bring not just the trombones and the tuba, but bring it into the low brass, right? And connect it into one section with two instrument classes, tuba and trombone, right?
Right.
And that kind of leads me to my thoughts on sound concept, right? Like, you can have whatever you want on principal. Tuba can have whatever they want. Second and third have to fit equidistant between those two, right? So I feel that, and I know that this is kind of a controversial topic in the trombone world, but I find that feel that, like,
here on Facebook.
It's a safe space. We're all friends.
Yeah.
Circle of trust here.
Yeah, it's good.
I find that it's my job to bridge that gap between second and tuba. I don't want to be so close to the tuba that it's like trombones and bass trombone and tuba, but I want to make it equally sound wise. So I go for a bigger sound concept on the bass trombone, and I prefer when a second trombone also has a bigger sound concept for a tenor, so that they're not the exact same sound size as the principal, leaving me just off in left field, right? Even if I had a small bass trombone sound, it's never going to be quite as compact as like a tenor's. So if they're doing their own thing, then there's no way we'll sound like a section unless that second bridges the gap between the first and the bass.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, so I'm going to pivot to another question that our good friend Wes Lebo asked about doubling. Woo! Awesome. Another Shires buddy. But he says, dude, can you talk about your approach to tenor doubling? Your sound is so beautiful. Also, any chance you can talk about your woodworking? It's really great, and I'm wondering your perspective on how that informs your musical life and beyond.
Whatever. I text Wes Lebo about what I need to do. Like,
I know.
That guy's legit. Woodworking. I need to be taking notes out of his book. I mean,
it's amazing stuff. Yeah, Wes. I mean,
gosh, I see the stuff he works on, like all the decks and housework and cabinet rebuilds, and I'm like I wanna be like you someday, man.
I know.
Yeah. So the tenor doubling. I'll start there, and then I'll move to a more fun.
And also, are you full on time for a little bit? Just we're a little close to 9.
Yeah. Kids are in bed. Kids are in bed.
Mine too.
My Modelo. I'm good to go. So for doubling, I think it's really important to have solid sound concepts. We were talking about this with tone earlier, like really defining your sound concept. Whenever I first started doing this whole doubling thing, like I said, I played tenor trombone a long time ago, but it's been a really long time. I still actually had my high school marching band trombone, an old Con 88H, and I upgraded to my buddy's high school marching band trombone that was a Con 88H.
Ooh.
So a little bit of an upgrade, but that's what I was stuck with. I mean, and trombones were just built different back then. And so I remember I contacted you and I was like, Sam, I need to come up to the factory. I need to make sure that as I'm working on tenor, that I can't blame anything on the trombone.
Right.
And so
there's plenty of stuff to worry about.
Right. And that was really important to me because I knew that I'm an equipment guy. I like to play around with different equipment. And I know how much it can change the way you play. And I didn't ever want to say, well, I could have been a better player if I had a better instrument.
If only.
So I went to the best. Hashtag Shires.
Sorry.
And so I came up to you guys. I got locked and loaded with a great tenor trombone. And then at that point, I knew that anything that needed to be fixed was me. And that was really important. So if you're going to double, make sure you get a solid instrument that you're not going to be telling yourself, oh, well, it's getting in my way of being better. So at that point, I mean, that didn't fix everything. At that point, I things still weren't working for me on tenor trombone. I was trying to make it happen, and I was failing at it. And thankfully, because of that, I knew it was me, and so I stopped. I put the horn down. I called a lot of my buddies that double around the world and that I really look up to and their doubling abilities. And I was like, all right, what advice do you have? Like, why am I sucking here? And the best advice I got was from Martin Skippers,
Nice.
one of my good buddies out in the Concertgebouw. He was saying, you have to have a great sound concept for each. And it can't be like the tenor trombone is just the upper harmonics of your bass trombone or whatever. It's like a slice of your bass trombone sound. It's like, it has to be its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so in this like week and a half period, 2-week period that I put the tenor down, I started refocusing on, all right, well, what do I want to sound like as a tenor trombonist? Because whenever I used to play, I only listened to Joe Alessi.
Yeah, of course.
And
As
I
one
needed
does.
more. Yeah, as one does. I needed more. You know, I needed some more input because I did on bass trombone, I listened to a lot, and I grabbed all my favorites. And so I started listening to, obviously, I listened to Nate Sagans, Colin Williams, Mark Lawrence, all these guys I meant, Jim Nova, Martin Skippers. I listened to a lot of people, you know, and Achilles.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I'm not even going to attempt his last name. That guy's got one of the most beautiful tenor sounds I've ever heard in my life. And I wanted, he's actually a great inspiration for me for tenor trombone. If there's anybody out there that hasn't heard this guy play, like, just go listen to Achilles Liarmakopoulos. I think I actually might have gotten that right.
He's pretty close, man. No, I mean, you're right. He's amazing.
Incredible. He's in the Canadian brass. That's probably the easiest way to look him up.
Yeah.
And so I had to like redefine in my head what I wanted, because I felt like I was kind of just shooting around all over the place blindly, not knowing where the dartboard was. And that once I came back to the tenor after doing that, I then went to Greg Black. Mm-hmm. And I went and I was like, all right, I need you to help me with mouthpieces. He gave me a good range of mouthpieces. And I was able to get to work right away with much better success.
Nice, cool.
Because I have a different sound concept on tenor than I do bass. And I'm sure eventually like I'll end up sounding like the same person on two instruments. But in my mind, at least, they're very different, you know, and I kind of go for this Mark Lawrence, Achilles, you know, sound and on my tenor. And that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about bass. My problem was when I was thinking about bass on tenor, I sounded like a bass trombonist trying to be good at tenor.
Right.
And it was just like woofy and too big of a sound. Like it didn't fit. It was weird.
It sounded awesome in the like clip that you put up this past week. That was pretty ridiculous. It sounded awesome.
That one, I feel like I've really kind of hit my stride, and
nice.
And it's all because, you know, again, that sound concept. Like when I practice, I know which direction I'm going. I know where the bullseye is on the dartboard now.
Yeah.
Because I've turned the lights on, you know.
Yeah. Cool. And woodworking is one of your hobbies. I'll just mention that.
Oh yeah, woodworking. Nice. Actually, I just finished up a project. I'll share it with you guys. I built this console table for my house.
Yeah. Looks so good done.
It's now a trombone stand / liquor cabinet.
That's funny.
But no, I really enjoy working with wood. I just enjoy the fact that unlike practicing, when you finish a project, you can step back and look at it and say, I'm done. I've finished. You can never do that with practice. It kind of beats you down a little bit sometimes, but it's so nice with woodworking to step back, and you get that reminder every day. I've got a bunch of things in my house that I've built, and I love getting to see my kid play on it or use it and think, I built that, it's completed, I'm happy with it, and it's like concrete goals.
Yeah. Finite.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And
No, I totally get it.
yeah, for anybody out there that's interested in woodworking, the two sites that I love to use are Rogue Engineer,
Mhm.
ROGUE engineer.com, and Anna White.
Yeah, the Anna White stuff's good and really easy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they spell it out for you. Like, go to Home Depot, buy these cuts of wood, and then cut them at these lengths. It's like putting a puzzle together. They make it so easy that all you have to do is really just assemble, then pick stain.
Mhm.
It's really the only creative part you have to do, and little details that you want to add in. So,
And we should say you should follow Wes Lebo on Instagram and Facebook and check out all of the projects that he does because it's nuts. This guy is really talented.
incredible. And if you need
Both,
a deck built, Wes Lebo can do it.
both trombone and woodworking.
That's right. Yeah, guy's amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you, Wes.
it was a good question. Hey, so you brought it up, otherwise I wouldn't. But let's chat a little bit about equipment. So you've played Shires for quite a while. When did you actually even start? What year was that?
To the 2013.
Yeah, okay. Because I had just started with the company, and I think I met you shortly thereafter.
Where were you before Shires? Did you just come out of school, or were you at a different trombone company, or?
No, I was at finishing at NEC.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right there in Boston.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And you finished in 2013, is that right?
2012, and so I started with the company in 2012 to 2013. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So whenever I joined Atlanta, they were like a Shires section, and there's really something special about and I'd talked to people about this before, about when all three people in the section play the same instrument, they just resonate the same. And it's really special, and I didn't want to be the person that came in and broke that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So Colin Williams actually was a huge help with all this. He helped me set up my instrument, my bass, and so we had Newell Sheridan.
Sure, yeah.
Packed up his huge van and brought out
all
20 bells and 100 slides and lead pipes and tune. I mean, the works, all the different valves. I mean, it was crazy. And he brought it to Colin's house. I brought lunch, and we sat there for 2 or 3 hours until we found what was right. And with Colin as my ears and Newell as my supply guy, we basically got the Lone Star model.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Pretty darn close.
Pretty close.
And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun. What a rare experience. Most people maybe try their friend's horn and it's like, all right, I'm just going to get that specifications and maybe later change stuff. But to be able to swap things in and out right then and there, that was really cool. But then also, I think I still wanted to make some changes with the lead pipe. I wanted a longer lead pipe, and so I called you and Steve, and you guys were able to just ship that out right away, and that was really helpful. So it was kind of we got most of it. I'd say 95% of it done at that little meeting with me, Colin, and Newell, and then a couple more things sent in the mail, and I was ready to go set. Yeah, but I think it's cool. The Lone Star has actually evolved over the years, and it's been a lot of fun getting to play around.
The biggest shift in the last year and a half, something like that, has been the bell, right? So now you've moved it to a gold brass bell. I know you still play the yellow brass sometimes too, which is really cool, but you've moved it to the gold brass, and it's a smidge heavier than what it was too.
Right. Well, yeah, and the main reason for that is I want people to see the Lone Star model as an ever evolving
kind of.
Right. The more I learn about the orchestral world and the solo world, I'm going to keep building an instrument that makes my job easier. So that essentially, like, the longer I work with you guys on this model, the better it gets for being able to do both, to do everything, right? And so, like, right now we've got with Lone Star model the yellow bell and the gold bell. The yellow bell, like, I can't play pops on this. It sounds too pretty. It's not like, it gets total wrong sound. Like, um, who was it that came down? I think it was Boston Brass came down. They did a Christmas show here in Atlanta, and they had Nate and I join them. And I
Cool.
brought my Lone Star orchestral setup, and I just was not matching. And
Yeah.
so that's why I was like, all right, good thing the Lone Star has two options. So I popped on the yellow bell, and it hit the
It's
sweet
perfect.
spot
Yeah.
right away. It fit in with all those guys. And so and this was right around whenever I was switching over to the gold bell. So I use my yellow bell on all of our pop stuff, big band, movie shows, and just anything that just needs uh, a little bit more of like a rock sound to it or big band sound to it. I can get with that yellow bell.
Yeah, it cuts a little bit differently.
It does. It has different colors to it, and then the gold bell. I love that for recital playing, definitely for orchestral playing, and it's so nice because all I have, it's so flexible with the sounds. All I have to do is change mouthpieces to go from orchestral to recital to audition.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
can do everything with this setup. And the only change I ever need to make my equipment is switch to yellow for big band.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's nice to be able to like keep the crux of what you're doing the same, especially because you do so much for obviously the orchestral stuff, and Atlanta is like notoriously a really versatile orchestra. I mean, you guys do
Pops.
a ton of pops.
Mhm.
But then
Yep.
solo wise, I mean, you're all over the freaking world performing and playing and doing master classes and teaching and stuff. So you
Yeah.
can't always bring two bells with you if you go to Korea for a trombone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's, thankfully, I've got, a solid setup for recitals. And so far, I've never had to go play a recital somewhere and sub with, no, I take that back. I went to, whenever I was in Detroit, I was playing with Detroit Symphony, and I played a recital at some of the
Oh,
local
okay.
universities
Yeah.
just this past season. And it was nice to be able to do that all with the same horn.
Yeah.
And just have to switch mouthpieces to change up the colors a little bit.
That's cool. Yeah, it's funny because like we were just chatting about other bells because you are an equipment geek for sure, and it's really fun. Yeah.
It's like being a car guy. Like, you don't just want to drive. I mean, maybe some people do just want to drive the same car, but it's nice to like own your favorite car,
Yeah.
and then get to check out some other cars. Like if
You
you
can
want to,
appreciate things. Yeah.
absolutely, you appreciate the other cars as well, right?
Yeah, that's funny. That's awesome. So can we chat just for a few minutes in terms of like what's next for you? What projects are on your radar? I know the summer and all this stuff is kind of throwing a wrench into a lot of things, but what are you most looking forward to as stuff kind of hopefully comes to some normalcy?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to making music again. Being I think one of the things I'm most looking forward to is um, getting back out there and playing recitals again. I miss getting to connect with people
Yeah.
through music, and that's it's such a big part of my life and big part of who I am. There's, I've said this a lot before. There's so many things that I can't say. I'm not a poet, and I can't say through words, through the English language. There's so many things I want to express and tell people about that I am not a wordsmith. I'm not good enough, that I don't feel like I can actually get across to you what I'm feeling
Right.
with words, and I can only get that catharsis through music. And so it's almost like my body and like my emotions are just like waiting to
Yeah.
be able to say something again to someone who wants to listen. Granted, my kids are great at listening. Your daughter every now and then gives me the thumbs up or thumbs down. All
That's
right, like,
great.
but like I miss getting to collaborate in chamber ensembles. I love orchestra too, and I miss that. But the intimate collaboration of just like a piano and a trombone on stage, or like a quintet or an octet or trombone choir, quartet, trio, small groups where you can communicate so easily. There's just something that's involved in those performances that make them so amazing. And that's what I miss the most right now, and I look forward to is hopefully, some schools will start having guest artists again,
Right. Yeah, of course.
and small recitals, and maybe big concerts won't return for a while. So, but small recitals and stuff would be that's what I
Make
look
you
forward to.
happy. Yeah. Yeah.
As far as projects, one of the things I'm looking forward to releasing eventually is I've been working on. So, like I said, I miss playing with
Yeah.
other people, right? And one of the big things is overdubbing right now, but um, I haven't figured out a good setup for acapella. But so in the meantime, I've been teaching myself piano
Oh,
to get better at that. I've got a little setup over here to this. This
yeah.
is where I practice a lot, and I can't see because so I moved the beer
And the microphone and
and the
the
microphone, but I have a piano right there.
nice. Okay, cool.
Wired into my computer, and I've been working on Arvo Part's Spiegel and Spiegel,
Whoa.
and that that piece is just it's one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever heard in my life. Like you can listen to it, and I just feel like whatever chair you're sitting in, your body just sort of like melts into the chair.
Yeah.
And so like I had to do something with that piece more than just listen to it. And I wanted to play it on a couple recitals I had lined up that unfortunately got canned because of all this. But so I've been working in Audacity and GarageBand to record myself playing the piano. Unfortunately, I'm not good enough to play. It's like three part, or even just it's so easy piano. It's such an easy piano part, but I'm still not good enough to just do everything at once. So I'm just
Right.
doing one line.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Um,
so cool. That's like pretty inspiring, man.
and so I hope it works. Like I've just finished up the piano part. I now need to record the violin part over it. Try to get the reverb right because thankfully I'm in the basement of my house. This is a really dry room.
Hmm.
Uh, Drywall and carpet and some sound panels will help do that.
Yeah.
But trying to match the reverb that my piano gets stock with the resonance the reverb I can add in like GarageBand or something. That's kind of what I'm working on now. That's my little fun project. When I'm not practicing, I like to dive into that. And another thing I'm going to release soon that I'm really excited about. So I've talked to a lot of people about how I have a different approach to practice than I was taught. I was taught fundamentals. You put on your metronome, you play your long tones, you shut your mouth, and you just do it, right? You will get better, right? And I did it, but I didn't have fun doing it, and it was really miserable. But I made myself do it and do all that really structured, slow lip slurs, blah blah blah. And it's really important to do that stuff. But I don't think it has to be as boring as sitting in a practice room with just your metronome and really simple fundamentals. Like it's
Right.
necessary you do that stuff, yes, but it doesn't have to be boring. And so I never do that stuff anymore. I always do it to pop tunes, right?
Right. Yeah, I've seen you do this
Um,
before.
yeah, to songs I'm listening to, but I've
Cool.
never figured out how to like convey that to people, right? Like how do I get that across? People ask, like, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, you just, and I try to play something, but I can see on their face, like,
So
it didn't transfer. Like
yeah.
what I meant to say did not come out because, in my words or in the way I demonstrated. So I've been brainstorming, all right, how do I get this across? And I'm starting with two really songs that I like listening to. Psycho by Post Malone,
Oh, cool.
Grace by Baby Rexha.
Okay.
I think they're really cool songs. The great thing about them is that they're auto-tuned.
Yeah.
So they're basically like playing along with drones, which I also know is really good for you, but I don't like doing because I feel like it's just drilling a drone into my head. And so I've written out fundamental routines to these songs so that what you can do is you can still get your fundamentals done, but you can enjoy doing it. You
That's
can
so cool.
like have music going along and you're playing along with that music without taking away from it. You're not trying to like, riff melodies over it. It's really simple long tones, lip slurs, arpeggios, stuff that fits into music that's just out there and free. And you don't have to buy like someone's set of drones to go with their book. It's already out there. You hop on YouTube and you click play and you play these exercises that I'm going to write out.
That's
And
cool.
so I've written them out. I just got to record them, and I'm going to post them to Instagram. So follow me at Baseball and Brian. Hopefully I'll get that done in like the next week or two.
Yeah.
And my goal is to start doing 2 songs a week, because copyright laws say that I can't post a minute of a song. So I'm going to do 29 seconds of 2 songs.
Okay, that's cool. So two
And
songs a
so
week, and it's all going to be on your Instagram.
follow me on my Instagram. Yeah.
Wow, cool.
And
Awesome.
so
I should
hopefully
link
I'll get it
those
started.
really quick. Here, let me just do this really quick because I was gonna add. We were too busy chatting, and I forgot about all of my little links here. Yes, sorry guys. So yeah, that'll be awesome. I've seen you give a masterclass where you did some of your exercises with the pop tunes, and
Oh,
it's
right. I
awesome
have some
to see.
Gavin DeGraw stuff written out, and
Yeah.
I'll use. I also used Muse, so I've already got some that are ready to go. But the philosophy behind it is, if you know what your goals are, if you know what your objectives are in doing fundamentals, then you can practice anything you want as long as you maintain those goals and objectives. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be long tones. You can do long tones uh, in any format, right? Like you can do them along to music. Like in the example here is, you could do your long tones along to a lot of these major pop tunes, because I've got them sorted out by key.
Uh,
So like for instance, Post Malone Psycho is in E flat major, right? So I write out a whole fundamental routine in E flat major, and that's I'm really looking forward to putting out, because it's something I'm really passionate about. I love playing along with all these songs, and I buzz along to them, play. That's like most of my routine right there is playing along to music, because I find it so sad that all of our music schools are full of these stuffy practice rooms that you're expected to go sit in there, turn on your tuner and metronome,
like
and be in.
punishment.
Yeah, it's punishment. You're right. Like, go practice, you bad boy, bad girl, right?
Jim
Uh,
Nova's making fun of you right now, by the way.
Jim Nova, what the hell's
he
he
said,
saying?
he said, "You calling my drones a head drill? Come at me, bro."
Well, not Jim's. I
Not
love
Jim.
Jim.
No.
Actually, Jim's are one of the only sets
I
of drums
know.
I tolerate, because it's an actual trombone playing. It's
Right.
not a synthesized
Yeah.
track. And I love you, Jim, and I love the drones you
These are
sent me.
perfect.
Thank you.
These are
Now,
perfect.
everybody go message Jim Nova. Here's his cell phone number.
Oh, poor
He'll
Jim.
give you a drone.
He probably loves it. It's okay.
Yeah, bug him. Send him an email. Get him on YouTube.
Absolutely. Go send him a Facebook message right now. So the only other thing I'm going to mention really quick is that you do a lot of teaching, a lot of I'm sure online teaching now. So if anybody's interested in taking a lesson with you at some point, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you? Go through your website, send a note there.
Yeah, actually, right on the front page of my website, bryanhecht.com is a link that you can contact me for lessons.
Awesome.
You can Facebook Messenger, message me on Instagram. Actually, a lot of people end up messaging me on Instagram or
Yeah.
Messenger. It all goes to my phone. I'll get it. So my email is basebonebrian@gmail.com. You can message me any of those ways. I'm going to get it. It's going to come to my phone. But yeah, I'm doing virtual lessons right now just because of the crazy things. But I think what's great about this whole pandemic is that a lot of us have really figured out how to do much better lessons. I've upgraded my audio equipment here. I've got an AT 2020 Audio Technica mic that I've got here with a pop filter. I've got a Focusrite interface. Using Zoom with all the right settings so that as I play, I can move the gain from talking to playing,
for sure.
and make it sound as close to being in the same room as possible, it's been fantastic. I've been working with students all over the world, in Colombia, in Germany, in Hong Kong, in Japan. It's really been cool that so many people are willing to work virtually, and that all the feedback I get from them has been that the setup is working great. So
it's also wild because like right before all of this happened, you were about to start like an entire lesson tour. Like you were headed out to California. We were going to do a whole bunch of stuff. Like you had a bunch of stuff on the book. So it's neat and it's cool that you've been able to be so flexible with it, but also that more people can kind of reach out to you in this way than if it were.
Absolutely. And it's something I think a lot of people didn't think was like a thing at first,
Yeah,
like no one really considers online lessons. And a lot of times when people message me, they say, "Hey, like, is that it? Like, do you do that? It's okay if you don't. I just out of the blue thought
right.
to ask." And so if I can get the word out, yes, absolutely. Online, happy to work virtually using Zoom app. I think is the best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if I can say real quick, if you're going to take a lesson, use a tablet or a computer. Don't do a lesson on your cell phone because you're not going to get a good sound on your end coming through your cell phone speakers. They're just
For
not
sure.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the Zoom app, this has sort of been it. No one really knew what Zoom was before this quarantine
And stock
pandemic.
went up quite a bit after this. So
Oh yeah, God, I wish I would have invested.
I know, no kidding.
But Zoom has been amazing because of their audio settings, their audio capture abilities. That whenever I did lessons on Skype before, it's like, all right, it's kind of similar. I can kind of show you, like you can hear pitch, rhythm, that kind of things. You couldn't hear
Right.
depth of sound, but with Zoom, it's so nice. You can really hear. It's really quality capture and more high quality bandwidth on the transmission.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, Bri, this was amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. And I mean, we
Yeah.
covered a lot of stuff. It's really kind of neat to cover such a broad range of topics with you. I will say that I appreciate everybody who's been watching our session and writing in questions. If you have other questions for Brian, definitely hit up his website, let him know. If you have any questions for us, you can visit us or reach out to us at info@shires.com. Similarly to Brian, if you just go onto our website, there's like a contact form there, so you can always send a message. Check out the Lone Star model, available at pretty much all of our custom shop dealers throughout the country, throughout the world. So we have a handy dandy dealer locator on our website that we just upgraded, so you can actually type in your zip code and find your closest dealer.
And if you haven't tried the new Gold Bell on the Lone Star, I
For sure.
highly recommend it. Check
and
it out.
and send us a message if you have questions about it. But yeah, I mean, the Shires TV things have been a blast. It's really fun for me because it's nice to get to see my friends and my buddies. And I also have gotten to hear some of these little tidbits before, and it's so amazing that the world gets to hear you chat about bass trombone playing.
Yeah,
And so
it's kind of one of my favorite things to talk about. So
yeah, you're pretty good at it. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Bri. This has been awesome. And thanks everybody who tuned in. We're going to keep the Shires TV coming out, each week for quite a while. We'll post the next one on Monday. I think it's going to be really fun. I am hoping that we'll be able to do the next one with some format in the factory. So that should be pretty cool. But thank you, Brian. Thank you, Facebook land. It's been a blast.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.